The Chronicles of Gutterman, the case of the dead corridor. Other inmate kept asking how long Gutterman had been in. Gutterman never answered the same way twice. Sometimes he said a while. Sometimes he said nothing. Once he said, long enough to know the walls breathe different now. The rats didn't care about time. They cared about food, heat, and wires. Gutterman sat on the edge of his bunk, feeding them stale cereal from a torn plastic cup. They climbed over his hands like they owned him. One of them, scarred down the spine, paused to stare up at him. Outside the cell, something heavy rolled past. Metal on concrete, smooth, controlled. One of the angels. No face, just a white armored shell with a camera eye that never blinked. Other inmate leaned closer, voice low. You hear about Ruiz? Gutterman didn't look up. And maintenance guy? Yeah. They say he went into D-line and never came back out right. Gutterman finally nodded once. D-line eats people. Other inmate gave a short laugh that didn't land. That's not even a thing. Gutterman looked at him then. It is, if you're the one in it. A rat climbed onto Gutterman's shoulder and sat still, as if listening. That was new. They didn't usually sit still. That meant something was moving in the walls. Not mice. Rats. His rats. Later, in the shower block, steam hung low and heavy. Everyone moved careful. Nobody talked much in there. That was rule number 1. Don't make noise you don't need to make. Weller broke that rule. He always did. Hey, old man, Weller said, stepping in behind Gutterman. You dropped something? Soap hit the wet floor, a small moment. Everyone saw it coming. Nobody stopped it. Weller grinned like he already won. Pick it up. Gutterman bent slowly. The room tightened. Water ran down his back, mixing with old bruises and newer scars. Weller leaned closer. Yeah, just like that. Gutterman spoke without turning. I'm gonna chop your fucking head off, he said, calm as tap water. Stuff your neck with shit and fuck the shit out of your neck. The shower room went still. Even the water sounded quieter for a second. Weller blinked, then swung. Gutterman moved first. Soap cracked into Weller's nose. Bone folded. Blood exploded instantly, bright against the gray tile. Weller roared and lunged. Gutterman slammed him into the wall once. Hard. Teeth scattered across the drain like coins. Again. Weller's body hit tile and didn't come back up clean. That's when the lights flickered. Not normal flicker. System flicker. Like the building itself was missing pieces. Somewhere deep in the walls, something was chewing. The first angel entered the shower block. White shell. Red sensor eye. Silent wheels. Inmate noncompliance detected. Then it stopped mid-roll, just paused. Its head tilted slightly. Inside the walls, the rats had found something important. Not food this time. Wire bundles, main conduits, backbone lines. The prison went quiet in sections, then dark. Emergency lights kicked on half a second too late. Another angel rolled forward and jerked sideways as its internal system spiked. Sparks burst from its neck seam. It collapsed like a cut puppet. Now it was noise everywhere. Screaming, footsteps slide, metal impact. Someone ran. Someone didn't make it past the corner. Gutterman didn't run yet. He watched the ceiling vents. The rats were coming through. Not random. Directional. Like they knew the map better than the engineers who built it. Other inmate grabbed his arm. What the hell is happening? Gutterman finally smiled a little. They're hungry. That's all he said. The corridor doors failed next. Not open. Not closed. Just wrong. Half-locked states that made bodies get stuck. Machines trying to decide what a human was allowed to be. Somewhere down the hall, a turret misfired into the ceiling and shredded pipework. Steam exploded outward. Visibility dropped to nothing. In that nothing, bodies started disappearing. Not all at once, one at a time. Gutterman walked through it like he already knew where the safe gaps were. Because he did. The rats were showing him. A small one ran ahead, stopping at intersections, waiting, like a guide. Other inmates started breathing too loud. You can't be serious right now. Gutterman didn't answer. A rat climbed his boot and ran up his leg, paused at his shoulder again. It squeaked once, like confirmation. At the main gate, everything locked down. Steel door, electronic core, no manual override. Other inmate laughed nervously. We're done. That's it. That's the end. Gutterman crouched, put his ear near the wall, listened. Then he tapped twice on the metal. Inside, something answered, chewing. Not random chewing, structured chewing. He stood. Back up, he told other inmate. Why? Because they're almost done. The wall behind the panel gave a small twitch of sparks. Then another. Then the lock light flickered from green to amber to dead. The door groaned open 6 inches. Enough. Screaming behind them got louder. Someone ran toward the opening, got pulled down in the dark by something small and fast. Gone before he finished the fall. Otto inmate froze. What are those things doing? Gutterman stepped through the opening. They're finishing the job. He didn't look back when the gate fully failed. Outside, the desert hit like silence with teeth. Hot wind. Dead ground. No water anywhere in sight. Behind him, the prison was still screaming. Inside it, machines were failing in sequence, like something inside the building had learned how to turn off parts of itself. Rats poured out last, moving through cracks in the fence, vents, broken seams. Gutterman stood still until the last one climbed onto his boot. He looked down at it. Good work, he said. The rat didn't blink, just stared at the burning structure behind them, like it understood exactly what it had helped end. The Chronicles of Gutterman, the case of the convenient lie. The rain had stopped, but the city still looked wet, like it couldn't decide whether to dry or stay miserable. Under the freeway, the concrete channel ran black and fast. It carried the usual debris again: crushed vape pods, cigarette filters, a child's plastic toy missing an arm, and thin sheets of cardboard that folded and sank like tired paper boats. Gutterman sat on an overturned milk crate, already halfway through a 40 of malt liquor. Miss Piss stood nearby, watching traffic through the chain-link fence. Krusty Kitty was nowhere in sight for the moment. That usually meant trouble was being scoped. Roxy leaned against a pillar, quiet for once. You ever just feel like the city chewing on you? She said. Nah, Gutterman said. City don't chew. It just swallows. Miss Piss didn't respond right away. She was already building something in her head. Then she turned. Okay, she said. Gutterman looked up slightly. What now? Miss Piss pointed toward a small strip of businesses across the street. A liquor store, a closed donut shop, and a security guard posted near a side door like he was protecting a secret nobody cared about. I'm gonna go talk to that man, she said. Gutterman squinted. Which man? Security man. Roxy frowned. That don't sound like a good idea. It's not, Miss Piss said calmly. That's why it'll work. She walked off before anyone could argue. Gutterman watched her go, then went back to his drink like the conversation had already been archived. Roxy looked at him. She always like that? Yeah, Gutterman said. She does plans like other people do regrets. Across the street, Miss Piss approached the security guard with the confidence of someone entering a room she already decided she owned. To anyone watching, it looked like a normal conversation. A woman asking questions, a guard answering, nodding, gesturing toward the back hall of the building. What they didn't see was the exchange happening under it. Money folded once, a glance, a quiet agreement. 10 minutes later, Miss Piss disappeared into the building's restroom. The guard went back to standing still like nothing had changed. Gutterman didn't notice any of it. He was leaning back, half laughing at something Roxy said, while two women walking past the bus stop briefly smiled at him. He smiled back. That was enough to erase most of his attention span for the next 20 minutes. Krusty Kitty eventually returned, jumping up onto the crate beside him. You're being manipulated, the cat said. Gutterman nodded slowly. Probably. Do we intervene? Nah, Krusty Kitty blinked. That feels irresponsible. Yeah, Gutterman said, taking another sip. But it's peaceful. Meanwhile, inside the bathroom across the street, Miss Piss sat on the floor against the tile wall, cigarette between her lips, doing something she didn't want to explain to anyone with too many questions. She looked exhausted, focused, alive in a very specific way. Outside the stall, a faint knock came once. Don't rush me, she muttered. The world didn't. When she finally came out, she walked past the security guard like they'd never met, like nothing had ever been agreed on except silence. Back outside, she rejoined the group. Gutterman looked up. Where you been? Talking, she said. Roxy narrowed her eyes slightly. That was a long talk. Miss Piss shrugged. Good listener. Gutterman didn't press it. He just handed her the rest of his drink without thinking. She took it. They sat there for a while longer, the way people do when nothing is required of them except existing in the same patch of sidewalk. Later that night, Miss Piss disappeared again. This time, longer. When she came back, she was carrying a small grocery bag. She walked straight up to Gutterman and dropped it into his lap, Inside was a cheap grocery store cake, chocolate frosting slightly uneven, plastic container still cold from refrigeration. Gutterman blinked at it. "What's this? Cake," she said. "Why?" "Because I felt bad," she said simply. Roxy raised an eyebrow. "About what?" Miss Piss ignored her. Gutterman stared at the cake for a moment like it might confess something first. Then he laughed once. Short. Real. "I know what you did," he said. Miss Piss froze just slightly. Roxy looked between them. Krusty Kitty's ears perked up. Gutterman tore a piece of plastic from the container lid and finally opened it. "You think I didn't notice you talking to that guard for 20 minutes?" he said. "Or the way you came back acting like nothing happened?" Miss Piss didn't answer. Gutterman took a bite of cake, chocolate frosting smeared slightly on his thumb. "I just didn't care," he said. "You came back. That's the part I needed." A pause. Then he added, "And I was hungry." Roxy burst out laughing. "Oh my God." Krusty Kitty nodded slowly. "This is acceptable governance." Miss Piss exhaled like she'd been holding her breath longer than she realized. "Yeah?" she said. "Yeah," Gutterman said, taking another bite. "Next time, just bring 2 cakes." From somewhere nearby, a siren passed through the city without stopping. The channel water kept moving, and for a little while, nobody needed anything more complicated than chocolate frosting and the quiet agreement that people do what they do. And sometimes that's enough. The Chronicles of Gutterman, the case of the sewer crown. The night was already leaning strange when the ducks showed up. Not metaphorically, actually, a cluster of baby ducks drifting in a clogged curb current like the city had briefly mistaken them for trash it could afford to ignore. They spun in a shallow gutter stream, caught between a broken storm drain and a half-collapsed parking lot edge. Gutterman was the first to notice. He crouched without ceremony. "Don't go in there," he muttered. Krusty Kitty appeared instantly beside him. "I was not planning to help," the cat said, already helping. A Fred leaned in, squinting. "Oh, hell nah. That's babies. That's straight up babies." Miss Piss was already moving without comment, kneeling at the curb, hands steady. Somewhere behind them, a passerby stopped. He had been mid-scroll on his phone, half present in the world like most people were. Then he saw it, a soaked, grimy man pulling a metal grate aside. A woman crouched in the street without hesitation. A quiet figure carefully redirecting water flow with broken cardboard. A cat supervising like it had issued permits. And a man in the center of it all, reaching into a gutter stream like it was just another problem that had forgotten it was supposed to be impossible to solve. The ducks tumbled out one by one into safer hands. Tiny, shaking, furious at existence. Gutterman held 2 of them briefly against his jacket to keep them warm. One peeped at him like it was considering legal action. A Fred gently cupped another. "There you go, little dudes. Y'all good now. Y'all out of there." Miss Piss stood, shaking water off her fingers. "Move them away from the drain." "I got 'em," Gutterman said. Krusty Kitty sniffed one duck and immediately looked offended by its entire concept. "Too soft," he declared. That's when the bystander finally understood what he was looking at. A gang of people rescuing baby ducks from a gutter, in the middle of a city that usually did not do things like that. He stepped closer, confused joy building in his voice. He pointed at Gutterman, still crouched, holding 2 ducks like fragile mistakes the world almost discarded, and shouted, "Bro, that's the sewer man!" Silence. A Fred looked up. "Sewer man?" Miss Piss turned slightly. Krusty Kitty froze like he was processing a title upgrade. The bystander, now committed, doubled down. "Yeah, that dude's the sewer man. He runs the sewers or something." Gutterman slowly looked up. "I don't run anything." The bystander pointed again, increasingly excited. Nah, I saw it. He just came out the gutter like he owns it." A Fred burst out laughing. "He the sewer man? Man, that sounds like a superhero nobody asked for." Miss Piss lost it immediately. "Oh my God, he got promoted by the sidewalk." Krusty Kitty nodded solemnly. "I accept his sewer-based title." Gutterman stood up with the duck still in his hands. This is not a title. But nobody was listening anymore. The bystander was now fully invested. "Sewer man saved the ducks. That's facts." A Fred pointed at Gutterman. "Man just got crowned by public consensus. That's crazy." Miss Piss was laughing so hard she had to lean on a mailbox. Krusty Kitty stood on a box like a royal advisor. I will begin documentation of his sewer-related achievements. Gutterman exhaled through his nose, looking at the ducks, then the group, then the laughing stranger who had accidentally renamed him. Just move, he said. And they did. The ducks were carried to safety. The street kept moving. And somewhere behind them, the name stuck like wet paper on concrete. Sewerman.
The Chronicles of Gutterman, the melting taco incident. The taco cart sat behind a liquor store under a flickering security light, the kind that kept turning on and off like it was testing whether the cold, dark timeline of this branch of reality was worth illuminating. The cook moved like someone under instructions he didn't understand. Sweat on his neck, eyes scanning the alley between chopping cilantro and folding tortillas. Nobody asked him anything. The tacos smelled good enough that questions felt unnecessary. Fred opened the foil bag. Eat fast before something interrupts us. Miss Piss grabbed one immediately. If this is poison, I want it to be well seasoned. Gutterman took a bite and leaned against a storm drain. Thick black gutter water flowed below them. Cigarette butts, vape pods, and a cracked doll head drifted slowly in it like it had been collecting evidence for years. Above the drain, someone had spray painted. Love feels best. Raj stopped and read it. That sentence feels too simple for this block. Miss Piss glanced at it. Yeah, that's either wisdom or someone getting dumped near industrial waste. Gutterman kept looking at it a moment longer. Simple things are usually what people argue about the hardest, he said. Nobody responded. Krusty Kitty sniffed the taco. I do not trust food prepared under stress. The cook suddenly looked up at Gutterman again, held his gaze a fraction too long, then looked away like he had made a mistake noticing anything at all. The first change was subtle, too subtle to name. Then the taco stopped behaving like food. Gutterman looked down at his. The tortilla softened in his hand, not breaking but losing structure, collapsing inward like it forgot it had to stay whole. He stared at it. That's not right. It slid through his fingers and dropped to the ground like warm wax. Across from him, Miss Piss froze. Why do they have eyes? Everyone turned. Inside the foil bag, the remaining tacos now had eyes pressed into the meat. Not decorative, functional, moving. They blinked. Then they started screaming. Don't eat me. Please stop. I didn't consent. Miss Piss dropped the bag immediately. Yeah, no, that's a hard stop. Fred backed up laughing and panicking at the same time. Bro, the tacos is talking for its life. Raj stared at one. It is looking at me like it knows my address. Krusty Kitty leaned closer. One taco turned toward him. Help! Krusty Kitty recoiled. I refuse participation in this system. The alley shifted. Not dramatically, like reality forgot one instruction and started improvising. The security light above them buzzed louder. The concrete looked damp even where it wasn't. Sound stretched too long after it happened. Raj touched the wall carefully. Something entering brain now. Miss Piss rubbed her eyes. I can hear electricity arguing. So can I, Gutterman said quietly. Gutterman's vision. Darkness first, not empty darkness, occupied darkness, whispers layered over each other, not random, structured, like many conversations happening in the same room but separated by intent. He understood immediately they were dead voices. Not ghosts trying to scare him, voices trying to communicate something precise. The whispers slowly aligned, and for a moment, everything became clear. Not symbolic clarity, actual clarity. He saw how everything connected. Behavior, fear, repetition, cruelty, love, inertia. Not as philosophy, but as systems repeating through people who couldn't see the structure they were inside. It all made sense, perfectly. He breathed out. Oh my God. Then something else entered. Cold, intentional. The whispers distorted immediately. Static filled the edges of everything. Above him stood figures, tall, still, faceless except for dark eyes that didn't reflect anything. Not human, not emotional. Interference agents. The dead voices tried again. The answer is, static cut it. Again, the answer is, gone. The figures didn't speak. They didn't need to. They were not erasing the message. They were preventing reception, like something blocking a signal mid-transmission. Gutterman tried to hold on to it. I had it, he said. I had it, I had it. The structure of the realization was still there, just out of reach, like something hidden behind glass he could almost see through. No, he said sharply. I know this. The whispers collapsed completely. The figures remained silent, watching. Then it dropped away. Dash missed Piz's vision. A white hallway stretching too far, diapers stacked floor to ceiling, machines dispensing them endlessly. A voice repeating, "You are not ready." Miss Piss kicked a machine over. Diapers spilled everywhere. "I didn't ask for this." Something moved at the end of the hallway, wrapped in layers of diapers. Approaching slowly, she read Krusty Kitty's vision. Tunnels, warm, wet, crowded, rats everywhere moving calmly around him. A large rat approached. "You returned." Krusty Kitty nodded. "I understand now." The rats formed a circle around him. Then something heavier moved deeper in the tunnel. Not rat-sized, not cat-sized. Something else entirely. A shape shifted forward, unclear, wet, breathing. Krusty Kitty stiffened. "What are you?" The shape stepped into partial light, then sneezed. A small soaked animal sat there, round, odd, unidentified in instinctive terms. It blinked at him. Krusty Kitty stared. "You are incorrect." The small creature did not leave. Raj's vision, an endless grocery store, fluorescent lights, infinite aisles, rice, tea, oil, spices. At the end of every aisle stood his mother. Same expression each time. "Raj," she said, "why you outside with sewer people at 3 a.m?" He turned. Another mother behind him. "You wasting life. You smell like street food. You become problem." Raj grabbed his head. "This is too specific to be hallucination." Reality returned slowly, like systems rebooting with missing pieces. Gutterman sat up, breathing hard. Miss Piss looked at him. "You okay?" "No," he said immediately. "What happened?" "I understood something," he said, completely, and then it was taken. "Taken by who?" He shook his head. "I don't know." A long silence. Then Raj looked toward the taco cart. The cook was gone, rummaging through crates behind the stall, panicked. "Where'd it go? Where'd it go?" He froze when he saw them looking, then said it. "I was supposed to give it." "Give what?" Miss Piss asked. The cook swallowed. "Paper." Gutterman stepped forward slightly. "What paper?" The cook looked terrified now. "Special payment." Silence tightened. The cook continued, voice shaking. "Man come before, no face, no name. He say sell tacos here or I disappear." Raj frowned. "Disappear how?" The cook didn't answer. Miss Piss did. "Real disappear?" The cook nodded. "Yes." A pause. Then he added, "I was supposed to deliver paper to Zebulon Munchk." The name landed wrong in the air, like it had weight that didn't belong in conversation. Gutterman went still. "Say that again." The cook shook his head fast. "I don't know what he is. Only name, I swear." Raj looked uncomfortable. "That name sound like problem with paperwork and reality." Miss Piss stared past the taco cart into the alley darkness. Gutterman did the same. Something behind the ordinary edges of the scene felt slightly closer than before. Not arriving, just noticed. Then, at the edge of the storm drain, the spray-painted words seemed brighter than they should be. "Love feels best." No one commented this time, because something had already started paying attention back. The Chronicles of Gutterman, the phone that shouldn't exist. They found the iPhone in a storm drain. Not floating, resting, like it had been placed there carefully and the gutter had decided not to argue. Gutterman spotted it first, wedged between a soda tab and a strip of plastic that looked like it had once been part of something functional. "New phone," he said. A Fred leaned over. "Bro, that's impossible. This place turns electronics into compost." Miss Piss reached in and pulled it out anyway. It was brand new. No scratches, no grime, no water damage. Too clean for where it was. Raj frowned. "That object does not belong to this environment." Krusty Kitty stepped closer. "It is pretending." Miss Piss turned it over in her hand. "So we're either holding a miracle or a surveillance device that learned humility." Gutterman took it, then immediately handed it back. "Nope," a Fred pointed. "We should sell it." Raj nodded. "Money is stable. This is unstable." Miss Piss added, "Or we smash it so nothing starts speaking through it again." Gutterman exhaled. "We're not defaulting to Zebulon Munch causes it every time something weird appears." Krusty Kitty sat down. "I want phone." Everyone paused. "No," Miss Piss said immediately. "I want phone," Krusty Kitty repeated. A Fred laughed. "Bro, you don't even have apps. What you gonna do, call rats?" Krusty Kitty blinked once. "Yes." That made the group go quiet for a beat. Then Gutterman spoke, still staring at the phone. "I had something earlier," he said. The group shifted slightly toward him. It wasn't just hallucination. It was structure, patterns. He turned the phone slowly in his hand like it might contain the missing piece. When you graph the numbers in any system, patterns emerge. Fred frowned. Like math, like everything, Gutterman said. There are patterns everywhere in nature. He gestured vaguely at the alley, the drain, the trash, the flickering light. Miss Piss leaned forward. So what about the stock market? There was a half-second silence. Then Fred laughed. Raj snorted. Even Krusty Kitty made a small noise that might have been agreement or judgment. Gutterman shook his head once. Same thing, he said. That got another round of chuckles. Not because it was profound, because it was too simple to argue with and too stupid to take seriously. The tension broke. They moved on from it like they moved on from most things that almost meant something. Krusty Kitty reached for the phone again. I still want it. Miss Piss sighed. Fine. Cat gets the cursed rectangle. Fred immediately objected. Bro, that is how movies start. Gutterman just handed it over. Whatever it is, he said, it already knows we're here. Krusty Kitty took the phone. It lit up instantly in his paws. One message appeared. User, unknown message. You took too long. Krusty Kitty stared at it. Acceptable tone, and the screen went dark.
The Chronicles of Gutterman, Oxnard. The McDonald's bag sat on a bench near the bus stop, torn open. Wind had flattened it against the wood slats so it barely moved. Inside it was a burger, cold, compressed, still structurally intact, but no longer warm enough to qualify as food in any meaningful sense. Fred picked it up. Still edible? He asked. Raj leaned in. Food from this area is statistically unreliable. Miss Piss took a bite anyway. She paused. It tastes like horse shit mixed with puke. Fred stepped back a little. That's not a food review. That's an incident report. Raj nodded. It is still technically useful information. Gutterman wasn't looking at the burger. His attention was on the ground around the bench. Trash was layered in uneven strata. Receipts, plastic fragments, packaging, all stacked by wind and repeated human traffic into compressed bands like sediment exposed after erosion. Krusty Kitty was already focused under the bench. There is paper under here, he said. Miss Piss wiped her mouth. Everything is under something if you keep digging. No, Krusty Kitty said. This is different. He reached under the McDonald's bag and pulled something out. A motel voucher, folded once, undamaged, no signs of weathering. Fred reached for it immediately. That's fake. Nothing clean survives here. Raj read it carefully. Motel 6, 1 week. Miss Piss narrowed her eyes. Who puts a hotel voucher under a burger? Gutterman turned it over. It wasn't under the burger, it was under the bag. Fred frowned. Same thing. No, Gutterman said. The bag blocks exposure. It acts like a cover layer. Silence held for a moment. Then voices came from down the sidewalk. 2 figures approaching. The first was a man talking loudly to himself, then answering as if someone else had responded. He wore layered clothing held together with mismatched stitching and plastic ties. His speech kept splitting mid-sentence like it was being redirected internally. The second pushed a shopping cart that rattled unevenly. Inside it sat a small, filthy pig wearing a cracked bicycle helmet. The pig snorted constantly, reacting to nothing and everything at once. The man pointed at the group. They got paper that don't belong here, he said. The woman beside him squinted at the voucher. No, that's motel paper. That's clean time paper. The pig snorted and knocked a can out of the cart. Fred leaned toward Raj. Are these people stable? Raj watched them carefully. No. The man stopped in front of them. That's a week, he said, pointing at the voucher. That's a clean week. Clean weeks don't just sit on benches. Miss Piss folded the voucher slightly. It's ours. The man laughed once, too sharply. Nobody owns a week. Weeks get assigned. The pig snorted again and stared directly at Krusty Kitty, who stared back without blinking. Gutterman finally spoke. We're taking it. The man nodded like that answer matched something he already believed. Yeah, that tracks. But trouble usually comes with things like that. The woman leaned on the cart. If it starts screaming at night, it's your problem. Then they walked past them like the conversation had already ended somewhere else. The pig squealed once as it passed. Krusty Kitty wheeled, watched them go. I don't trust their animal, he said. Miss Piss looked at the voucher again. I don't trust anything. Fred nodded. That's fair, and they started walking toward the motel. Chronicles of Gutterman, Oxnard. Room 12. The Motel 6 didn't change when they arrived. It simply accepted them the way it accepted everything else, briefly, without opinion, and with a faint smell of detergent trying its best. Room 12 was upstairs, thin walls, thin air, the kind of place where every sound had an audience in the adjacent rooms. Miss Piss dropped her bag and immediately opened the window. "I can hear the ocean better from here," she said. "That is still not how hearing works," Raj replied. "It is for me." Krusty Kitty went straight under the chair like he was checking structural integrity. Gutterman stayed standing near the door for a while, as if deciding whether the room counted as temporary or permanent. Fred was already bored. "This is just a place to sleep," he said. "People always leave stuff in places like this." Miss Piss glanced at him. "Don't start." "I'm just saying," Fred continued. "Rooms like this, people drop things, phones, bags, sometimes better things." Raj looked at him. "Define better." Fred smiled slightly. "You know, useful things." Gutterman finally sat down. "You're going out," he said. Fred didn't deny it. That was answer enough. 3:07 a.m. The motel was mostly quiet by then. Not silent. Nothing in Oxnard was silent. Just reduced to a low, constant hum of distant traffic, refrigeration units and things happening too far away to matter individually. Fred moved through the parking lot alone. He had a flashlight and the kind of focus that only shows up when someone believes they might find something that changes their position in the world. He checked near stairwells, behind trash bins, between parked cars. "I know someone dropped something," he muttered to himself. "They always drop something." A distant dog barked once and stopped. He didn't notice. He was looking down, always down. The coyotes did not arrive like an attack. They arrived like subtraction. One moment there was empty space between two parked cars. Then there was not. Fred looked up too late. The flashlight beam caught movement at the edge of the lot. Low shapes, coordinated. No hesitation. He stepped back. "Okay," he said. "No, that's not." The sound cut off before it finished becoming a sentence. The flashlight fell first, then stopped moving. From room 12, nobody heard it clearly enough to identify it as anything specific, just a short burst of noise that didn't repeat. 3:11 a.m. Miss Piss woke first. "Something's wrong," she said immediately. Gutterman was already standing. Krusty Kitty was already at the door. Raj didn't ask what. He just followed. They reached the balcony. The parking lot looked unchanged at first glance. Then Miss Piss stopped. "Fred's not there." Gutterman didn't answer. He was already scanning. Krusty Kitty stepped forward slightly. "There is movement near the lower lot." Raj squinted. "Animals." Miss Piss grabbed the railing. "No," she said, "not like that." Then they saw what was left. Not a body in any clean sense, just motion in and out of darkness near the far edge of the lot. Brief, low, organized. Coyotes, not scattered, not random, working through something that was already finished. Miss Piss didn't move for a long moment. Then she said, very quietly, "He went out for stupid reasons." Gutterman nodded once. "Yes." Raj exhaled. "That is consistent with his behavior profile." Krusty Kitty stared at the lot. "Predation event," he said. Miss Piss turned sharply. "Don't label it like that." Krusty Kitty didn't respond. He just kept watching. Morning. The coyotes were gone by sunrise. No dramatic exit, no trace of decision, just absence again, in a different direction. The parking lot looked like it had never contained anything else. They never found a Fred. Not in pieces, not in form, just absence where a person had been. Miss Piss sat on the motel stairs for a long time, holding her knees. Jack Dog stood beside her, unusually still. Raj spoke first. "He should not have gone alone." Miss Piss didn't look up. "He always goes alone. That's the problem." Gutterman was quiet for a while. Then, he was looking for something that was never part of what this place offers. Krusty Kitty added, "The system does not return lost objects here." That statement hung longer than the others. Later that day, no one talked much. Room 12 felt smaller, not physically, structurally, like the absence of a Fred had changed the way the space balanced itself. Miss Piss finally stood. "I'm going surfing," she said. No one argued. Jack Dog followed her to the door. This time, he hesitated before leaving. Just briefly, like he had noticed the change too. Then he went anyway. The Chronicles of Gutterman, Oxnard. Room 12. The Motel 6 sat off the road like it had been placed there without any intention of being revisited. Room 12 was upstairs. Thin walls. Every sound nearby arrived slightly delayed, like it had already passed through other rooms before reaching them. Miss Piss stood by the window. You can hear the ocean better from here. That is not how hearing works, Raj said. It is for me. Outside, there was that cross ambience where the 101 highway never fully stopped speaking, and the ocean never fully stopped answering. If you stood still long enough, the two merged into a single layered sound, like a field at dusk that never turned into night. Krusty Kitty noticed it first and said nothing. Gutterman stayed near the door. Fred was already restless. This kind of place, he said, people leave things behind. Miss Piss glanced at him. Don't start. I'm just saying, Fred continued. Phones, bags, whatever. Stuff shows up. Raj looked at him. What kind of stuff? You know, Fred said. Useful stuff. Gutterman finally spoke. You're leaving tonight. Fred didn't deny it. Then something cut through the parking lot. Fast. Low. Wrong direction. A black seagull. It moved like it didn't fully understand how air worked, like every wing beat was slightly experimental, and behind it, a tack dog. He appeared like he had already been in motion before anyone noticed. His body was small, compact, built like forward momentum had been his default setting since birth. His coat was a mix of browns, unevenly distributed, with deliberate-looking white patches under his chin and across his belly, like someone had painted contrast into him after the fact and stopped just before making it symmetrical. He hit the parking lot like a sentence already in progress. No hesitation, no adjustment, just pursuit. The black seagull veered toward the motel roof. Attack dog followed immediately. He didn't bark, he committed. He ran across the asphalt, bounced off the curb, and took the stairs two at a time, claws scraping metal edges, tail locked straight like a directional indicator. The goal circled once above the building. Attack dog reached the landing, looked up, and launched himself into a jump that had no business succeeding. He missed by a fraction. Landings followed. Skid, recovery, immediate reacceleration. Miss Piss leaned forward slightly at the window. That dog is insane, she said. Raj watched quietly. It is structurally optimized for pursuit, he said. Krusty Kitty observed without blinking. Gutterman added nothing. The gull disappeared over the roofline. Attack dog followed. A moment later, silence returned to the lot. Not emptiness, just the ambient mix again. The 101's steady pressure. The ocean's distant response. Balanced, uneven, constant. Like standing still in a meadow at dusk and realizing it is not actually quiet, just far away from anything you can name. Later, Attack dog reappeared at the stairwell, breathing fast, tongue out, tail still. He looked up at Miss Piss, then sat down like the chase had been successfully completed according to his internal rules, even if no one else understood the outcome. Miss Piss stared at him. You're coming with us, she said. Attack dog didn't respond. He didn't need to. Gutterman watched him for a long moment. Raj exhaled once. Krusty Kitty finally spoke. I do not trust his priorities. Miss Piss didn't look away from the dog. Good, she said. He doesn't either. And the motel room stayed open to the sound of highway and ocean, neither fully canceling the other out, both insisting on being heard at the same time. The Chronicles of Gutterman, Oxnard, Santa Barbara Drift. The drive north felt like the world refusing to change its tone, just rearranging its noise. The 101 stayed close the whole way, like it didn't trust them to travel without supervision. On one side of the road, the ocean kept appearing and disappearing between buildings and cliffs, never fully committing to visibility. The air itself shifted as they moved, less dry, more layered, like sound had started carrying moisture. Attack dog sat in the back seat, like he had assigned himself a permanent duty. Every time the car slowed, his head lifted slightly, scanning for something only he understood. Miss Piss drove. Gutterman didn't comment on direction. Krusty Kitty watched the roadside like it might correct itself if observed long enough. Fred and Raj argued in the back at first, then stopped somewhere around Ventura when the argument ran out of direction and just became silence. They arrived in Santa Barbara just after noon. The place didn't look richer so much as it looked more maintained. Even the decay had been scheduled. They parked near a beach access lot where sand spilled into pavement like the boundary had given up enforcing itself. Miss Piss stepped out first. I can feel treasure, she said. That is not a real sense, Raj replied. It is today. Attack Dog hit the sand immediately, running in a tight loop like he was recalibrating the entire coastline through motion. Fred watched him. That dog doesn't stop. He only stops when something else does, Gutterman said. Nobody asked what that meant. They walked toward the beach. A little further down, two men were digging near the tide line. One of them was clearly convinced the ocean was actively hiding things from him. The other didn't speak much, just dug with mechanical consistency, like participation was already agreed upon in a prior life. A handwritten sign leaned nearby, Private Treasure Recovery Zone, temporary. Fred stopped. That's not a thing, Raj nodded. It is currently functioning as one. Miss Piss looked at the hole. I like it. Attack Dog circled the digging site twice, then decided it was not important and ran off again. Krusty Kitty followed the movement of the sand itself instead of the people. Gutterman stood still. The ocean doesn't hide things, he said. It reassigns them. Nobody responded to that either. That was when the gull appeared again. Not black this time. Just aggressive in the way gulls become when they've learned that humans forget consequences quickly. It swooped low over the digging site and grabbed something shiny from the sand. Fred reacted instantly. That's ours. He ran. Raj followed immediately, not because he agreed, but because movement had already been introduced into the system and not participating felt structurally unsafe. The gull took off low over the beach. Fred sprinted after it, shouting at it like volume could negotiate physics. Raj kept pace, slightly more controlled, trying to calculate an intercept that the gull had no interest in respecting. Attack Dog saw it and broke away immediately, sand spraying behind him. Miss Piss didn't move at first, then smiled slightly. Oh no, she said, and followed. The chase moved along the shoreline. The gull stayed just ahead, never rising too high, always close enough to feel achievable and far enough to remain insulting. Fred slipped first. The sand gave out under him near a wet patch where tide water had been hiding beneath the surface. He went down hard, rolling once, then twice, then stopping in a position that suggested the ocean had simply decided he was done. Raj reached him a second later. Are you functional? Raj asked. Fred laughed once. I think I just found a rock, he said. Then the tide shifted slightly, not dramatically, just enough. The sand beneath them loosened again. Raj tried to step back, but the ground didn't respond the way it had a moment earlier. It wasn't collapse, it was reclassification. Both of them went down together in a way that didn't look violent at first, just wrong, like the beach had changed its mind about supporting them. Attack Dog arrived at the edge of it a moment later. He barked once. Not panic. Recognition. Miss Piss stopped running as she saw it too late to change anything. Fred was trying to push himself up, laughing again for reasons that didn't match the situation. Raj was half submerged in shifting sand, still attempting to analyze it. Interesting behavior, Raj said. That is not the time for that, Miss Piss shouted. I am aware. Then the tide came in just slightly stronger than before. Not a wave. Just a correction. And the beach finished the argument. By the time it settled again, neither of them were there in any meaningful way. No bodies stayed above the surface long enough to matter. Just the gull circling once more overhead, then leaving as if satisfied with the exchange. Attack Dog stood still for a long moment, then turned back toward the group. He didn't look confused. He looked like the situation had been logged. They didn't talk about it immediately. Some things didn't fit into conversation until later or never. Gutterman broke the silence first. He won't be coming back, he said. Miss Piss didn't respond. Krusty Kitty sat down in the sand. System instability increased, he said. No, Gutterman replied. Just fewer components. Attack Dog sat beside Miss Piss. He didn't bark again. That night, they stayed near the beach parking edge. Not a motel this time. Just proximity to structure. A subplot had already started without announcement earlier in the day, involving a woman who claimed the coastline was mapping itself differently at night and kept drawing lines in the sand that disappeared faster than she could finish them. Nobody challenged her. Nobody confirmed her either. She simply existed at the edge of their awareness, occasionally pointing at nothing and nodding like it explained something. Miss Piss ignored her for most of the evening. Attack Dog did not. He watched her drawings until she stopped, then watched the sand where they had been. Later, Miss Piss stood at the shoreline. You think they just got taken? She asked. Gutterman looked out at the water. I think they stopped being part of the system that keeps track. That's not comforting. No, he said. It isn't meant to be. Attack Dog stood between them, facing the ocean. For the first time since Oxnard, he didn't run. He just watched, like something out there had already noticed them back. The Chronicles of Gutterman, Static Skin, Part 4, Dinner with the Dead Channels. The apartment wasn't really an apartment. It was a stacked unit above a closed vape shop that still blinked an outdated neon sign through half-broken letters. Inside, the only reliable light came from the television. Gutterman and Miss Piss sat on mismatched chairs eating dinner out of takeout containers that had already started losing structural confidence. Attack Dog lay under the table, alert but not reactive, like he was listening to something underneath the building itself. On screen, forensic files. The episode was about a serial killer in Simi Valley. Clean cut, quiet, neighbor type. The kind of man who made people feel safe until the shape of him was reassembled correctly after the fact. The narrator's voice moved with clinical patience. He disposed of evidence in multiple locations. Miss Piss stabbed at her food. Every time they say multiple locations, it means nobody wanted to walk farther. Gutterman didn't look away from the screen. Distance increases detection entropy, he said. He was optimizing risk distribution. On screen, the story tightened. The killer's roommate had gone through trash, found discarded tapes, not labeled correctly, not hidden well enough. That was the mistake. The roommate reported it. Then everything collapsed into police procedure. Miss Piss leaned back slightly. Damn, poor lady. She kept eating. For a moment, the room didn't respond. Then Gutterman spoke without looking away from the television. Nah, he said. It's about learning how to defend ourselves against dangerous individuals. Attack Dog shifted slightly under the table at the word dangerous, like it was a category he recognized. On screen, detectives described behavioral patterns, missed signs, small inconsistencies that only made sense when viewed after violence had already happened. Gutterman nodded once. That's always how it works, he said. No one notices the pattern until the pattern is finished. Miss Piss pointed at the screen with her fork. They always say that after the fact, like it's obvious. It is obvious, Gutterman replied, just not in real time. The documentary cut to interview footage, the roommate describing the discovery. Miss Piss shook her head slightly. So we just watch people get killed and call it education? Gutterman finally looked down at his food. We don't just watch, he said. We reduce uncertainty. Miss Piss gave a short laugh. That's a fancy way to say morbid entertainment. Gutterman didn't disagree, but he didn't agree either. On screen, the case concluded. Arrest, confession, procedural closure. The kind of ending that only exists because something irreversible already happened. Attack Dog stared at the television like it was a moving threat assessment. Then Miss Piss changed the channel briefly, but paused mid-motion. A neuroscience segment had appeared between programs. A calm voice explained research about laughter and cognitive load. How the brain sometimes uses humor as a pressure release when processing high emotional or violent information. How laughter can reduce internal overload when the mind is forced to process conflict, fear, or contradiction faster than it can resolve it. Miss Piss listened for a few seconds. So basically, she said, people laugh so they don't short circuit. Gutterman nodded slightly. In simplified terms. She looked down at her food again. That explains a lot of things I've heard people laugh at. Gutterman added, it also explains why people laugh during things they don't find funny in isolation. Attack Dog gave a low sound, not a bark, not approval, just acknowledgement of something existing in the environment. Miss Piss exhaled. Feels weird, she said. Eating while hearing about someone getting killed. Gutterman responded without looking up. Human cognition doesn't separate consumption contexts cleanly, he said. We process survival, entertainment, and threat data in overlapping systems. Miss Piss pointed her fork at the screen again. So we're just multitasking trauma now. That is one way to phrase it. She took another bite, then paused. Still feels fucked up, though. Gutterman finally looked at her. Yes. A silence followed that was not comfortable, but stable. On screen, the forensic case moved on without them. Outside the apartment, the neon sign flickered again in the rain-slick air, spelling half a word that never fully resolved into meaning. Attack Dog lifted his head slightly, listening to something no one else in the room could confirm. And Gutter Man watched the screen like it might eventually show something that wasn't already happening elsewhere. But it didn't. It never did. The Chronicles of Gutter Man, Neon Tide Leak, extended cut. The containment alarms changed tone halfway through the facility. Not louder, smarter. The first alarms had sounded designed for workers. These sounded designed for assets. Red emergency lights strobed through the corridors in slow pulses. Thick pipes sweated condensation overhead. Somewhere deep below the concrete flooring, something massive slammed once against metal hard enough to vibrate the walls. Leon pointed ahead while running. Security corridor. Fastest way out. Miss Piss nearly slipped on chemical runoff. That sentence had too much confidence in it. Attack Dog barked toward the darkness behind them. Not playful barking, not sea lion barking, war barking. Krusty Kitty looked back once. I believe Tank 9 is no longer fully contained. Nobody slowed down to discuss that. They rounded a corner and stopped hard. The hallway ahead had transformed into a dense lattice of laser beams. Thin red lines crisscrossed floor to ceiling, some static, some moving slowly, some vibrating microscopically like strands of glowing spider silk under tension. At the far end sat a reinforced security door with a green exit sign above it. Miss Piss stared. You have got to be fucking kidding me. Leon looked panicked. It wasn't like this earlier. Gutterman crouched near the threshold, studying the beams carefully. Pressure-sensitive security grid. Krusty Kitty narrowed his eyes. If interrupted, likely automated lockdown. Miss Piss pointed at the ceiling. Why does every evil corporation build shit like this? Because rich people believe suffering equals sophistication, Gutterman replied. Attack Dog immediately walked forward. No. Everybody shouted simultaneously. Attack Dog froze mid-step. One laser skimmed across his nose, the beam reflected briefly in his eyes. Then the entire grid shifted configuration with a low electronic hum. Leon looked horrified. It's adaptive. Miss Piss exhaled slowly. I hate smart buildings. The crossing. Gutterman moved first. Carefully. Slowly. Studying the timing. The beams moved in patterns, not random. Structured repetition cycles. Everything mathematical develops rhythm eventually, he muttered. Miss Piss rolled her eyes. Please crack the death hallway faster. Gutterman stepped over one beam, ducked under another, twisted sideways through a narrow opening between two moving lines. For a moment, he looked bizarrely graceful. Then his jacket brushed a laser. A loud warning chirped. Everybody froze. The system paused, then reset itself without triggering lockdown. Leon blinked. Why didn't it activate? Krusty Kitty pointed toward a damaged ceiling panel. One emitter malfunctioning. The system is compensating. Miss Piss grinned. So the evil death hallway is built by the lowest bidder. Like most systems, Gutterman replied. He reached the halfway point. Turned back. Watch the lower sweep pattern. It repeats every 4 seconds. Miss Piss immediately moved. Unlike Gutterman, she approached the beams with pure chaotic athleticism. She slid under one, stepped over another, spun sideways between two crossing lines while laughing nervously. This is the coolest, horrible thing that's ever happened to me. Attack Dog barked excitedly and tried to follow. Leon grabbed him just in time. No heroic dog shit right now. Krusty Kitty crossed next. His movements were disturbingly precise, barely any wasted motion. At one point, he flattened himself against the wall while 6 beams shifted around him simultaneously. Miss Piss stared. You've done crime before. I have done observation. You just folded yourself like a wet napkin. Adaptability is survival. Halfway through, one beam suddenly shifted direction unexpectedly toward Krusty Kitty's tail. Attack Dog saw it first. He lunged forward, barking wildly. Krusty Kitty reacted instantly, jerking upward just enough for the beam to miss by less than an inch. The laser struck the wall behind him instead. A small automated turret unfolded from the ceiling. Everybody collectively shouted, "Fuck!" The turret scanned, paused, then targeted movement. Gutterman grabbed a loose pipe from the wall and hurled it across the corridor. The turret tracked the pipe and opened fire immediately. The hallway exploded with sparks and shattered concrete. Miss Piss screamed, laughing. This place fucking rules. It absolutely does not, Leon shouted back. The turret emptied its burst into the wrong target long enough for everyone to scramble through the remaining beams. Attack dogs squeezed under the final laser at the last second, ears flattened completely backward. The security door slammed shut behind them just as gunfire erupted through the wall. Silence. Heavy breathing. Attack dogs sneezed once. Miss Piss collapsed against the wall, laughing uncontrollably. That was the stupidest thing we've ever survived. Top 5, Gutterman corrected. Leon stared at them all. You people are completely insane. Krusty Kitty nodded calmly. Correct. Then somewhere deep inside the facility came another metallic scream from Tank 9. Longer this time. Wet. Hungry. The laughter stopped. Even Attack Dog went silent again. And far behind the sealed security door, something large hit reinforced steel hard enough to briefly dim the hallway lights.
The Chronicles of Gutterman, the dog by the liquor store. The night smelled like fryer grease, wet pavement and old cigarettes cooked into concrete over decades. Gutterman, Miss Piss, Krusty Kitty and Attack Dog sat outside a closed laundromat near Oxnard Boulevard while traffic hissed through shallow rainwater nearby. Attack Dog was asleep inside a shopping cart basket lined with stolen towels. Gutterman had been talking for a while now, not drunk. Not fully sober either, just haunted enough to become conversational. You know, he said, staring at the glow of the liquor store sign across the street, I looked into becoming a bartender once about 15 years ago. Miss Piss raised an eyebrow. You? Yeah. What happened? Gutterman scratched his beard. Went to a class, learned the drinks, learned the laws. Ultimately, I just didn't have the ability to sell poison to my common man. Krusty Kitty nodded slowly, like this was academically reasonable. The entire industry operates in morally questionable, ethically unsustainable space, Gutterman continued. The law says you can't serve anyone until they're drunk. As a bartender, it's your responsibility to never make anyone drunk. If you do, and they go drunk drive and smush a toddler, you are partly responsible. Miss Piss stared into the parking lot. That's actually kind of true. You knowingly violated the law you promised to maintain for the safety of your local community as much as your patrons. A long silence followed that. Attack Dog farted in his sleep. Nobody acknowledged it. I've held many jobs where there was opportunity to advance, Gutterman continued, but it would require stepping on the heads of others to climb the ladder. I'd rather leave than treat people in ways I don't wish to be treated. Miss Piss looked over. You regret it? No, Gutterman shrugged. I've made my peace with it. I will not be rich. I will get into heaven in exchange. Ah! Eye of the needle and whatnot. Krusty Kitty adjusted himself atop the dryer vent. Most wealth accumulation systems appear dependent upon exploitation gradients. Exactly. Gutterman leaned forward now, getting momentum. Many jobs in our society involve lying or manipulating people to sell them a thing they don't need. Food poisoning them, medication instead of exercise, plastics that cause cancer and feminize males. Miss Piss nodded. A salesman is a snake, Gutterman pointed her. Cross that out. A McDonald's burger is colon cancer and heart disease wearing ketchup. Traffic passed. Rain tapped softly against an abandoned newspaper rack. The entire existence of cars is basically a scam, Gutterman said. We had good public transportation and should focus on a new technologically advanced version. Another huge industry paid cronies to fix the score. Miss Piss laughed. You're spiraling now. No, listen. He pointed vaguely at the city itself. This has never been capitalism. At least not in my lifetime, or my parents'. Once we had an economy based on goods and skills and labor. Now, most money made in America comes from shady bank deals, money laundering, and paying politicians to make laws helping corporations avoid regulations, avoid safety impositions, and supply workers the absolute minimum. Krusty Kitty nodded again. Workers in our society are commonly treated worse than slaves because they are easily replaceable. Miss Piss looked over sharply. That's dark. A slave owner at least had incentive to maintain the health of the slave from a business standpoint, Gutterman replied. Now executives get bonuses by paying workers as little as possible while passing as many costs onto society as they can. Miss Piss muttered, all you had to do was pay us a living wage. Gutterman exhaled hard through his nose. In the end, the little guy, the peon, the general public will rise up and take what belongs to them from the billionaire vampires who have sucked a glorious egg down into a shriveled peach pit. Miss Piss stared upward at the cloudy sky. The course of human history is being shaped by devils and fakes. Yes, Gutterman replied quietly. Then after a moment, I'm sorry if I've been rambling. This shit just haunts me. Silence settled again. Then Miss Piss stood up. Let's go steal some beers. Gutterman rose immediately. We must drown our pain like true Americans. Near the liquor store entrance sat a young native woman in a weather-beaten army jacket, covered in old patches and safety pins. Dark braids, sharp eyes, expression permanently halfway between anger and exhaustion. She overheard the last part and snorted. Stealing beer isn't resistance, she said. Miss Piss grinned. No, but it's affordable. The woman looked at the group, especially Attack Dog, then at Gutterman. You people homeless or philosophical? Both, Krusty Kitty answered. She introduced herself as Nita Crow, and within minutes she was ranting too. It bothers me deeply, she said, how Christianity was forced on my ancestors using torture, rape and murder. Now people got access to history and information and still kneel willingly before the same systems. Miss Piss nodded slowly. Damn! They broke entire cultures, then called it salvation, Nita continued, and now descendants defend the people who did it. Gutterman listened carefully, then nodded once. Power launders itself through time. Nita looked surprised. That's actually a pretty good sentence, thank you. Attack Dog suddenly stood up rigidly. Ears forward, tail stiff. Why? Everyone followed his stare. Across the parking lot near a dumpster behind the liquor store, a small dog. Dirty white fur, one floppy ear, nervous eyes. The dog froze when spotted. Miss Piss crouched immediately. Or the dog bore the chase. What followed became one of the least coordinated rescue attempts in recent gang history. The little dog moved with terrifying agility, under shopping carts, between parked cars, across a drainage ditch, at one point directly through a hedge with enough speed to physically part branches. Attack Dog lost his mind immediately. Not aggressive, just professionally invested. He sprinted after it, barking encouragement that sounded suspiciously tactical. Come back, little man, Miss Piss shouted. That is not helping, Nita yelled back. Krusty Kitty attempted interception from the left flank but misjudged wet pavement and slid directly into a newspaper dispenser. Gutterman tripped over a parking block, trying to corner the dog near a taco truck. The taco vendor watched all of this without visible surprise. Finally, they lost the dog completely. Everybody stood panting near the alley. Miss Piss bent over laughing. That little fucker juked us! Exceptional maneuverability, Krusty Kitty admitted. Then, Attack Dog barked once toward the dumpsters behind a pharmacy. The dog had returned. Quietly grazing beside spilled fast food and old lettuce, everyone froze. This time they approached carefully. No sudden movement, no shouting. Nita slowly crouched. It's okay, little dude. The dog looked uncertain. Attack Dog sat down calmly beside her, not barking now, just waiting. The smaller dog stared at Attack Dog for several seconds, then cautiously approached. Miss Piss gently scooped it up. Success. The entire group cheered quietly like exhausted criminals who had accidentally completed a wholesome side quest. The clinic. The free clinic sat inside an old converted storefront beside a nail salon and a tax service. Dim lighting. Linoleum floors. A tired veterinarian with pink hair and neck tattoos examined the dog carefully. Malnourished, she said, but healthy overall. The dog licked her face immediately. Also emotionally manipulative. Miss Piss held the little animal while everyone suggested names. Beans, said Krusty Kitty. No, said Nita. Motor oil, Gutterman suggested. No. Tax fraud, Miss Piss offered. The dog gave no reaction. Attack Dog barked once. Then Nita quietly said ghost. The dog's ears perked immediately. Tail wagging. Everyone paused. Well, shit, Miss Piss said. I guess his name's Ghost. Ghost barked once. Decision finalised. The Chronicles of Gutterman, Waterfall Country. The hike started badly. Attack Dog had stolen half a breakfast burrito from a cyclist near the trailhead and escaped into the brush before anyone could apologise properly. By the time the gang caught up to him, he was sitting proudly beside a fallen log with sour cream on his nose and absolutely no remorse in his eyes. Ghost sat nearby, watching him with quiet admiration. "You are raising a criminal," Nita said. "He came pre-installed," Miss Piss replied. The trail wound upward through dry brush and scattered oak trees. Morning fog still hung low in places where the sunlight hadn't reached yet. Somewhere ahead, waterfall noise, not loud, just steady enough to pull everyone forward. Gutterman walked slower today, thinking, that was usually dangerous. Crusty Kitty rode on Miss Piss's backpack for part of the climb like a deeply judgmental scarf. Ghost trotted beside Attack Dog while trying unsuccessfully to imitate his confidence. At one point they passed a lizard, flattened motionless against a warm rock, tiny chest pulsing, perfect camouflage. Nita stopped. "Look at that little dude." Attack Dog immediately barked. The lizard vanished between stones instantly. "Evolution," Gutterman muttered. "Millions of years just to create a tiny nervous wizard that survives by becoming wallpaper." They kept hiking. Further up, the waterfall finally came into view. Cold white water dropping over black rock into a shallow pool surrounded by moss and roots. No buildings, no traffic, no ads, just gravity doing its thing. Miss Piss sat down immediately. "Now this," she said. "Feels closer to correct."
The talk!
They ate quietly at first. Cheap sandwiches, warm beer, trail mix with suspiciously few actual nuts. Ghost slept beside Nita while Attack Dog stared into the woods like he was monitoring border activity. A hawk circled high overhead. Gutterman watched it for a long time, then sighed. "You know what disgusts me lately?" Miss Piss glanced over carefully. "That's a broad category. The idea that people spend decades building trust and admiration only to use it selling garbage." Nita nodded slowly. Gutterman picked at his sandwich. "You spend your life becoming respected. Then one day you're pushing miracle drugs to desperate people while pretending it's empowerment." Miss Piss drank quietly. "She knows diet and exercise exist," Gutterman continued. "Everybody knows it, but pills make richer vampires." Crusty Kitty flicked his tail. "Many systems reward profit extraction over long-term human flourishing." "Exactly." The waterfall filled a silence for a moment. Gutterman stared out toward the trees. "The idea of caring about your legacy is repugnant too." Nita looked over. "How so?" "In 50 years, nobody's going to care who most celebrities were. Most presidents already blur together." He gestured vaguely at the future itself. "People worship brands and personalities like permanence exists. Meanwhile, some kid in 2080 might be eating Pokemon brand burgers delivered by drones before getting injected with engineered appetite suppressants." Miss Piss laughed once. "That future sounds annoying as shit." "It'll probably happen." Gutterman pointed toward the stream. "Humans repeat weird cycles too. Head shaping, foot binding, beauty standards that mutilate people while society pretends it's normal." Nita skipped a rock into the pool. "Civilizations decorate trauma differently every century. Exports." Ghost suddenly barked at a squirrel. Attack Dog joined immediately despite having no idea what the squirrel had done. The squirrel escaped vertically with professional efficiency. Crusty Kitty watched it climb. Excellent tail deployment. Then Gutterman resumed. "You ever look into America's biggest exports?" Miss Piss groaned. "Oh no." "No, seriously." He started counting on his fingers. "Oil products, weapons, cars, pharmaceuticals, industrial chemicals." Nita nodded slowly. "That checks out." "Every one of them comes with a shadow attached," Gutterman continued. "Oil poisons ecosystems and locks societies into dependency systems." He held up another finger. "Weapons keep war economies profitable." Another. "Cars help dismantle public transportation systems and redesign cities around endless consumption." Another. "Pharmaceuticals become dangerous when profit incentives encourage lifelong treatment instead of prevention." Crusty Kitty added, "Industrial chemical exports frequently externalize environmental damage onto future generations." Miss Piss stared at the waterfall. "Damn, we really built an empire out of side effects." "Pretty much." A deer appeared briefly through the trees uphill. Everyone went quiet automatically. The animal stepped cautiously into a patch of sunlight. Thin legs, massive ears rotating constantly, alive in a way cities rarely allow. Ghost watched in fascination. Attack Dog froze completely for once. The deer bounded away a second later. Gone. Miss Piss smiled softly. "Beautiful little thing. Animals still remember what reality is." That sentence hung there. Then he spoke again. After a few weeks in retail, it began to feel like any job forces us to suspend our scruples and bow down to pressures society creates. Miss Piss sighed. Not every job, most. Gutterman rubbed his face tiredly. Families absorb these systems too, then pass them on to kids like inherited debt. He looked down at the water. If my work helps poison people and my taxes fund bombs that blow apart children, am I weird for feeling accomplished if I choose not to participate? Miss Piss answered immediately. You can't blame every worker trapped inside the machine. Gutterman looked at her quietly. Didn't argue, didn't raise his voice, just looked. And after a few seconds, Miss Piss exhaled hard and stared away toward the waterfall. Yeah, she muttered. Putting a bow on a pile of shit is still kind of helping move the shit around. Nobody laughed, because it landed too close to truth. Resistant, Nita sat cross-legged beside Ghost. As you look across the world, she said, the systems of control are not equal. Some societies got more freedom than others. Gutterman nodded slowly. And the people with more freedom got more responsibility. Yes. The wind moved softly through the trees. Birds somewhere deeper in the canyon exchanged sharp little calls that sounded almost electronic. We all got methods of resistance, Nita continued. Rejecting the vampire bite matters. Miss Piss smirked faintly. That's a good phrase. We gotta cut off necrotic flesh, Nita said. Pull dead leaves, restore the experiment. Gutterman stared upward through the trees. 250 years is probably a decent pivot point. Crusty Kitty tilted his head. The Constitution predates electricity infrastructure. Exactly, Gutterman said. The founders had no clue computers would exist. Hell, when this country formed, nobody even knew dinosaurs existed. Miss Piss laughed. They were out there writing laws with powdered wigs and zero understanding of velociraptors. Pretty much. Nita picked up Ghost gently as the little dog rolled onto his back. Maybe updating society shouldn't be treated like heresy. The waterfall kept moving, unconcerned with politics, unconcerned with history. Above the pool, a dragonfly hovered in place so perfectly it looked suspended by invisible wire. A tack dog watched it intensely, then sneezed at it. The dragonfly escaped unharmed. Good reflexes, Crusty Kitty observed. And for a little while longer, the gang sat quietly beside the water, listening to a world that still functioned without permission from corporations, politicians, or algorithms.